According to Section 210.86, you do not need to provide ground fault circuit interrupter or GFCI protection for single or duplex receptacles in the kitchen that are not installed to serve countertop surfaces. Therefore, you can use non-ground fault circuit interrupter receptacles for the rope lights under the cabinets in the kitchen. As mentioned in the question, Section 210.8 does not allow for single receptacles in bathrooms to be exempt from ground fault circuit interrupter protection. Therefore, you must use ground fault circuit interrupter receptacles for the rope lights under the cabinets in the bathrooms. Consider these additional factors. Firstly, wattage. Ensure that the wattage of the rope lights does not exceed the ampacity of the lighting circuit. Secondly, circuit protection. The receptacles for the rope lights should be protected by a circuit breaker or fuse size appropriately for the wattage of the lights. Thirdly, accessibility. Make sure that the receptacles for the rope lights are easily accessible for maintenance or repairs. Finally, code compliance. Always consult with local building codes and electrical inspectors to ensure compliance with all applicable regulations. Let's delve deeper into ground fault circuit interrupter protection. A ground fault circuit interrupter is a safety device that protects people from electrical shock. It works by monitoring the current flowing in a circuit. If there is a difference of more than 5 mA between the current flowing to and from the device, the ground fault circuit interrupter will trip, cutting off the power. Ground fault circuit interrupters are required in areas where there is a high risk of electric shock, such as bathrooms, kitchens, and outdoors. The National Electrical Code, or NEC, specifies where ground fault circuit interrupter protection is required. Section 210.8 of the National Electrical Code covers ground fault circuit interrupter protection for personnel. This section requires ground fault circuit interrupter protection for receptacles installed in dwelling units in specific locations. These locations include bathrooms, garages, outdoors, crawl spaces, unfinished basements, kitchens, sinks, boathouses, bathtubs, and shower stalls. In kitchens, ground fault circuit interrupter protection is required for all receptacles that serve countertop surfaces. This includes receptacles located within 6 feet of a sink. However, Section 210.86 provides an exception for receptacles that are not installed to serve countertop surfaces. This means that receptacles installed under cabinets for appliances such as dishwashers or refrigerators do not require ground fault circuit interrupter protection. The reasoning behind this exception is that these appliances are typically not used in areas where there is a high risk of electric shock. Bathrooms, on the other hand, require ground fault circuit interrupter protection for all receptacles, regardless of their location. This is because bathrooms are considered to be high-risk areas for electric shock due to the presence of water. The question mentions using a 15-amp lighting circuit. It is important to ensure that the total load of the rope lights does not exceed the capacity of the circuit. To calculate the total load, add up the wattage of all the rope lights. Then divide the total wattage by the voltage of the circuit, which is typically 120 volts in residential applications. This will give you the total current draw of the rope lights in amps. Make sure that the total current draw does not exceed 15 amps. If it does, you will need to install a separate circuit for the rope lights. The receptacles for the rope light should be protected by a circuit breaker or fuse that is sized appropriately for the wattage of the lights. A 15-amp circuit breaker or fuse is typically used for lighting circuits. However, if the total current draw of the rope lights is less than 15 amps, you can use a smaller circuit breaker or fuse. It is also important to make sure that the receptacles for the rope lights are easily accessible for maintenance or repairs. This means that the receptacles should not be hidden behind cabinets or other obstructions. The receptacle should also be located in a dry place to prevent electric shock. When installing electrical wiring and devices, always consult with local building codes and electrical inspectors to ensure compliance with all applicable regulations. Local codes may have additional requirements or restrictions that are not covered by the National Electrical Code. In summary, you can use non-ground fault circuit interrupter receptacles for the rope lights under the cabinets in the kitchen, as long as the receptacles are not installed to serve countertop surfaces. You must use ground fault circuit interrupter receptacles for the rope lights under the cabinets in the bathrooms. Ensure that the total load of the rope lights does not exceed the capacity of the lighting circuit. Protect the receptacles for the rope lights with a circuit breaker or fuse that is sized appropriately for the wattage of the lights. Make sure that the receptacles for the rope lights are easily accessible for maintenance or repairs. Always consult with local building codes and electrical inspectors to ensure compliance with all applicable regulations. Let's discuss further details on wattage calculations and circuit protection. Wattage is a measure of electrical power. It is calculated by multiplying the voltage by the current. For example, a 120-volt circuit with a current of 1 amp has a wattage of 120 watts. The wattage of an electrical device is typically marked in the device itself. When calculating the total load of a circuit, you need to add up the wattage of all the devices that are connected to the circuit. The total wattage should not exceed the capacity of the circuit. Circuit breakers and fuses are safety devices that protect electrical circuits from overcurrents. An overcurrent occurs when the current in a circuit exceeds the rated capacity of the circuit. Overcurrents can be caused by short circuits, ground faults, or overloading the circuit. When an overcurrent occurs, the circuit breaker or fuse will trip, cutting off the power to the circuit. Circuit breakers and fuses are rated in amps. The amp rating of a circuit breaker or fuse indicates the amount of current that the device can carry before it trips. When selecting a circuit breaker or fuse for a circuit, it is important to choose a device that is rated for the appropriate amperage. The amp rating should be slightly higher than the total current draw of the devices that are connected to the circuit. For example, if the total current draw of the devices on a circuit is 12 amps, you should use a 15 amp circuit breaker or fuse. It is important to note that the National Electrical Code has specific requirements for the size of circuit breakers and fuses. These requirements are based on the type of circuit and the devices that are connected to the circuit. Always consult with the National Electrical Code and local building codes to ensure that you are using the correct size circuit breakers and fuses. Also, consider the types of rope lights you are using. Light-emitting diode or LED rope lights are energy efficient and produce very little heat. Incandescent rope lights consume more energy and produce more heat. Because of the lower energy consumption of light-emitting diode rope lights, you will likely be able to install more of them on a single circuit than incandescent rope lights. Consider the length of the rope lights you are using. Longer rope lights will consume more power than shorter rope lights. If you are using long lengths of rope lights, you may need to use multiple circuits to power them. Always follow the manufacturer's instructions when installing rope lights. The manufacturer's instructions will provide information on the wattage of the rope lights, the recommended circuit size, and other important safety information. Now let's look at accessibility. Ensuring the receptacles are accessible is crucial for several reasons. Firstly, for maintenance, accessible receptacles make it easier to unplug and replace rope lights when they burn out or malfunction. Secondly, for safety, in the event of a short circuit or other electrical problem, accessible receptacles allow you to quickly disconnect the power to the rope lights. Thirdly, for inspections, electrical inspectors need to be able to easily access the receptacles to verify that they are properly installed and grounded. To ensure accessibility, avoid placing receptacles behind cabinets or other obstructions. Consider using surface-mounted receptacles or receptacles that are installed in easily accessible locations. If you must install receptacles behind cabinets, make sure that there is enough clearance to easily reach the receptacle. Also, consider using extension cords to bring the receptacles to a more accessible location. However, be sure to use heavy-duty extension cords that are rated for the amperage of the rope lights. Do not overload extension cords. Overloaded extension cords can overheat and cause a fire. Finally, let's consider local building codes. Local building codes may have additional requirements for the installation of rope lights. For example, some local codes may require that all receptacles be ground fault circuit interrupter protected, regardless of their location. Other local codes may have specific requirements for the type of wiring that is used to install rope lights. Always consult with local building codes and electrical inspectors to ensure that you are complying with all applicable regulations. In addition to the National Electrical Code and local building codes, there are other standards and guidelines that you may want to consider when installing rope lights. For example, Underwriters Laboratories, or ALL, is a non-profit organization that tests and certifies electrical products. Underwriters Laboratories listed rope lights have been tested and found to be safe for use. The Illuminating Engineering Society, or WISE, is a professional organization that provides guidance on lighting design and installation. The Illuminating Engineering Society Lighting Handbook provides information on the selection, installation, and maintenance of lighting systems. By following the recommendations in the Underwriters Laboratories listing and the Illuminating Engineering Society Lighting Handbook, you can ensure that you are installing rope lights safely and effectively. Remember, electrical work can be dangerous. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, hire a qualified electrician to install the rope lights. A qualified electrician will have the knowledge and experience to install the rope lights safely and in accordance with all applicable codes and regulations. In conclusion, when installing rope lights under cabinets in kitchens and bathrooms, it is important to understand the ground fault circuit interrupter protection requirements of the National Electrical Code and local building codes. You can use non-ground fault circuit interrupter receptacles for the rope lights under the cabinets in the kitchen, as long as the receptacles are not installed to serve countertop surfaces. You must use ground fault circuit interrupter receptacles for the rope lights under the cabinets in the bathrooms. Ensure that the total load of the rope lights does not exceed the capacity of the lighting circuit. Protect the receptacles for the rope lights with a circuit breaker or fuse that is sized appropriately for the wattage of the lights. Make sure that the receptacles for the rope lights are easily accessible for maintenance or repairs. Always consult with local building codes and electrical inspectors to ensure compliance with all applicable regulations. By following these guidelines, you can ensure that you are installing rope lights safely and effectively. The use of ground fault circuit interrupter protection is vital in areas prone to moisture, such as bathrooms and kitchens. A ground fault circuit interrupter constantly monitors the electrical current flowing through circuits. If it detects an imbalance, meaning some of the current is leaking to ground, which could happen if someone touches a live wire while also touching a grounded object, it quickly shuts off the power to prevent a potentially fatal electric shock. The sensitivity of a ground fault circuit interrupter is carefully calibrated to trip at a very low current level, typically around 5 milliamps. This is far below the level that would cause serious injury or death. When a ground fault circuit interrupter trips, it indicates that there is a problem in the electrical system that needs to be addressed. It's essential to identify and correct the source of the ground fault before resetting the ground fault circuit interrupter and restoring power to the circuit. Using the correct type and size of wiring for your rope light installation is also extremely important for safety and code compliance. The National Electrical Code specifies the types of wires that are permitted for different applications based on factors such as the voltage, current, and environmental conditions. For example, non-metallic sheath cable, commonly known as Romex, is often used for residential wiring. However, it's important to select the appropriate gauge or thickness of the wire based on the amperage of the circuit. Using undersized wire can cause it to overheat and potentially start a fire. Additionally, the National Electrical Code requires that all wiring be properly protected from physical damage. This may involve running the wiring through conduit, which is a metal or plastic pipe that provides a protective enclosure. When making electrical connections, it's crucial to use approved wiring methods and connectors. Wire connectors, such as wire nuts or terminal strips, are designed to create a secure and reliable electrical connection. They should be properly tightened to prevent loose connections, which can cause overheating and arcing. Splicing wires outside of an approved junction box is generally not permitted, as it can create a fire hazard. Junction boxes provide a safe enclosure for wire splices and connections, protecting them from physical damage and moisture. Remember that while light-emitting diode rope lights are generally energy efficient, it's still crucial to calculate the total load on the circuit and ensure that it doesn't exceed the circuit's capacity. Overloading a circuit can cause the circuit breaker to trip frequently, and it can also create a fire hazard.